Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We have lots of playoff stuff to discuss. A coaching firing in the NHL. Not surprising, but now the market of coaches goes up to, well, it was two, and now it's back to two after the hiring in Buffalo, which we'll talk about in a minute. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Oh, you mean you think I have something to talk about? All right.
When don't you?
Well, I mean, that's my job, Mike. I do my job. Anyhow, with the NFL draft upon us,
yes,
I thought I would talk about some of the testing. And what's interesting is, I don't think I knew this, that they stopped using the Wonderlic in 2022, but they have replaced it. They replaced it with something called the S2. And so the S2, CJ Stroud took it last year. And
he was
a place called the Mirror US claimed that he only scored 18 out of 100.
Right.
And, he defended that by saying these people never played football who are critiquing me, which I always hate. Like, don't go there. But he had a good year. So, okay, maybe he is a football savant. But now all of a sudden some agents are like, yeah, I don't know if we want our clients taking these tests. And I got to tell you something. If you don't want to take that test, you're dropping down on my draft board. I am looking at everything. Like, if somebody wants to hand me that thing from ESPN that Hembo did that showed me all the failures of the first round, well, a lot of times those failures are because you didn't do your due diligence. And so I'm going to do my due diligence, and I'm going to say, okay, you have the right not to take one of those cognitive tests, and I have the right to not draft you there. So I just think teams should do it, and I think the ones that don't are making a mistake.
Now, Kev, what Russ is talking about is that the NFL stopped doing the Wonderlic test a couple years ago, and CJ Stroud had a bad grade in it, but still played.
Not in the Wonderlic, in the new one. It's
called the new one. And I mean, it sort of goes hand in hand with what's going on in U.S. colleges right now, because some of these colleges are not requiring the SAT or the ACT for entry, which I did a long time ago, but things have just changed. But I mean, I can understand why players and their agents might resist taking these tests if they think it's going to have a detrimental effect on their draft slot in whatever draft it is.
Yeah, well, there's no question that it's already happened for the last several years that it impacts how teams look at you if you don't do well on these tests. So, and we see that even with the testing of your athletic ability. There are players that opt out. Players coming off injuries don't like to do it. And we've had other players simply not want to do it, period. And, I think if you're willing to accept the consequences of that, that's your right. It's your prerogative.
Right. I'm just saying, Kev, if I'm like a GM, I want to see that testing. I want them to do that testing. If they don't, I'm going to just put them in a different grouping now and just see how they stack up against some of these other players. Because there's a list that came out of like what the NFL failure rate is for first round picks. And I think part of the reason you fail is because you don't do your due diligence and you just say, hey, look at that guy like Zach Wilson who's got that great arm. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. We've already seen players, a number of the quarterbacks didn't participate in the combine in Indianapolis this year for the draft. And I'm wondering, Russ, if that's going to spread to the NHL with the draft combine in Buffalo.
I don't think so. Hockey players are different, Mike. Yeah. They're built a different way. I've spoken to probably already, let's say, conservative estimate, 20 top draft picks this year, and one or two didn't get invited. The rest all want to be at the combine. They all said they're looking forward to it. They're training for it because they're competitive guys. They all want to do it. So I think hockey players are different.
Yeah, they're lying. They're looking forward to the wings. That's why they're coming to Buffalo.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. But Kev, I did see that the Lions signed two big contracts, their offensive tackle and their star wide receiver. So, that I guess that's good news for their franchise. And the draft is in Detroit, correct?
Yeah, it is. I'm actually going to be out of town for it, which is probably a good thing. It's really disrupted life in
All right,
and then Detroit. I mean, it started pretty early too, in terms of shutting down streets, and like it's hard to explain to people how massive this is for a city.
yeah, we had it in Philly 2 years ago. I have an idea.
Yeah, it's really nuts, and it's so big as well, and that it's unlike the NHL draft where most Americans don't really know the players
Right.
of the NHL draft. They might know one or two just because if they've been reading a little bit about who the top picks are, but it's different in the NFL because there's already a layer of fandom that's been created by the players' participation in college football. So, and it is weird though, like the failure rate, and which is why Russ's point is a good one, because you most always get starters out of the draft, and if you don't, you've really made a mistake because, first of all, you're drafting more mature players. They're closer
and
to
now it seems since the pandemic, you're getting some 23, 24-year-olds.
Right.
Yeah, and what's interesting here in Detroit, I heard a discussion on talk radio about the fans. There was some discussion about a team. The Lions might take this guy who's not projected to be a starter, and like the fan base, at least not right away. He needs some time, and
Right.
the fan base was kind of taken aback by that. There are people calling in and said, well, then we don't need them. We want guys that are going to step in. We have holes that we need to fill.
Well, it's similar story in Buffalo. There's been a lot of it goes with hockey too. I don't put any stock in mock drafts because one pick that falls through, or one pick that is off that throws the whole complete thing off. But they're saying, well, the Bills are going to draft a cornerback, and because they cut Tre'Davious White and he was injured. Well, they don't need a cornerback. They have two starting cornerbacks. They have a third guy who they drafted in the first round. And if they draft a cornerback, the guy's not going to play, where they have spots that, they have no wide receivers right now. They need to draft a wide receiver. And that's, so, the problem is they're drafting 28th, and I think the Lions are drafting down there pretty close to that as well, which is a new thing for them. But it's going to be interesting. I'd like to see what the Jets are going to take, Russ. They're not going to take a quarterback.
No. I mean, there's talk of the tight end. Considering they've had 3 good tight ends in their history, I don't think they should. I think they're going to go with the wide receiver. I don't think they're going to be able to trade up and get Harrison Jr., and I don't think they should. But we'll see. The interesting thing is, so I was looking. So there was a guy, Kevin, just similar to this. The Eagles drafted this guy, Danny Watkins. He was an offensive guard, and he played in the CFL. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, this guy, he was bigger than a lot of guys. He was 300 pounds, 310, and I just didn't see where he was going to be like a great NFL pick. And they took him. They went all in on him, and they drafted him 23rd overall, and he played like 2 years.
Wow. Hey, I did want to bring up in this part of the show, I want to talk about the World Championships. That's why I was a little late, because I had to type up that story. But I went and I saw flag football on Sunday at the youth level. And for those of you who are living in caves and don't know what's happening, flag football has become one of the fastest kind of growing sports. And the idea, especially at the youth level. Now, when I was a kid, it was very big. Now I'm talking about in the 60s. But by the time we got to the 70s, it was dead. Like nobody was playing flag football.
I played it in college. It was big. But I was at the University of Houston, so I just chalked that up to it's a very competitive college, and it was very competitive there.
Yeah, they had touch football when I was in college as well, but not flag football. But anyway, now the NFL, if my understanding of this is correct, is sponsoring all this, and I think the hope is that it's going to end up as a high school sport for both boys and girls. Now, the difference between the game I played back in the 60s when I was in like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade is the number of players on the field. It's now no longer 8, it's 5. Now, as I was watching my 5-year-old grandson, who, by the way, broke off 35-yard touchdown run. Which, I tried to decide whether he was Christian McCaffrey or Barry Sanders. I couldn't make up my mind which one he was.
Billy Sims.
Yeah. So, but anyway, all I can think of is I'm watching this 5-person flag football, and the rules are a little bit different. You have to be, you don't line up right on the line of scrimmage like they used to do. Now you're like a yard and a half or 2 yards off, and then the ball is snapped, and so forth. All I can think of is, they're going to have NFL players play at the Olympics in this. And, you could have a team with 5 9-200-meter sprinters on your team. Like, this could be it's absolutely, this could be wild. Like, I mean,
this is a funny thing, Kev. So week 2 when I was in college for flag football, I was the coach, and I was eating lunch every day with a sprinter. And University of Houston had guys like Carl Lewis there after the fact. They had great athletes. And this guy was like from Zimbabwe, and he wanted to join the team. I said, yeah, come on down. His name was like Lehman or something like that, right? We tried to throw him the ball. He couldn't catch it. I said, just hand him the ball. He ran out the field like 2 or 3 times in our game. We won easy. The next week, he's like, I can't play. My coach won't let me. But that was the point. Like, with 5 guys, it's going to be like that. You're right.
I mean, it's going to be crazy. And, of course, the NFL is all about this because of, their brand is going to be all over this.
Right. It's smart.
Yeah, and it's going to be good. I mean, I know a little bit about it because some of my students, for those of you who don't know, I teach journalism in college now as well. One of my students did a big story on this and how it's all going to work out. And there was quotes from several NFL stars said, I can't wait to play this. This is going to be so much fun. And it was fun. Like when I went with now this was only at the youth level, but it was played at a school stadium, and they had 4 games on a field. The fields are like 40 yards or 45 yards long. So you had 4 different games going on at the same time, and the place was packed. And like, even at my, 5-year-old grandson's level, it was fun. It was exciting, trying to catch the guy and try to get his flag.
There is still some contact. Like, people should understand it's not contactless. It's not.
Well, at that level, now again, I'm talking 5-year-olds here.
Right. That's different.
No. There's that. What I was going to say is there is more contact, because if you knock the person down, whether it was accidental or on purpose, they didn't distinguish.
Oh, wow.
Then the guy was down.
Okay.
Like, you didn't have to reach down and pull his flag.
Right.
So it was interesting, and it was my first look at the new sort of way they're playing flag football, and it was highly entertaining. And I, as a, these are my grandkids, but I'm sure as a parent, like, I would be in favor of this, just as
me too. I would be.
Yeah, it's a fun sport. I think the potential for injury is less than you might see in other sports. And everybody had a good time. They were very democratic in their approach to making sure at that level everybody touched the football and everybody got a chance to run it, and everybody played quarterback for a while. It was fun. So,
all right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, April 24th, 2024.
Russ Cohen from NHLDraftBuzz.com.
Hi there, Kevin Allen.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And I pointed out on Twitter a few minutes ago that at 2:42 this afternoon, it was 4:24:24. 2:42:42. In 2:42 and 24 seconds, it was 4 after 2 after 4 were like 11 numbers. So that, I thought that was
wild.
I thought the apocalypse was going to come. Okay, let's start with the breaking news that happened about 15 minutes before the show started. The San Jose Sharks fired David Quinn as their head coach after an abysmal season. But I mean, I think that's what the San Jose Sharks were sort of aiming towards, was to be the worst team or one of the worst teams. And they accomplished their goal. And Quinn had a year left in his contract. Russ, former coach of the Rangers, former successful college coach, probably ends up going back there now, you would think. But, I think it's a little unfair, but, he did get paid. So there you go.
Well, so this is what what ends up happening. Like, he did get paid, no question. He took his shot. He's now been in the NFL, NHL rather, and yeah, he'll probably go back to college hockey. There is a lot of top college hockey coaches, with better credentials than Quinn, that will just stay in college hockey. And the reason is because they can't get a long-term commitment from NHL teams. So they don't want to give up like their 10-year commitment to a college to go 2 years in the NHL and get fired. So in the future, you're going to probably see fewer college coaches coming, not because they can't do it, but because there's not enough security.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like the Carl in at Denver.
Yeah, David Carl will be a top example, but Denver will probably lock him up as long as they can.
Yeah. Now, Kev, I looked at the coaching market, and going into the week, there were 2 vacancies, and we'll talk about Lindy Ruff in Buffalo in a second. Now, Ruff gets hired, replacing Don Granato, and now Quinn. But you have, I think it's 4 coaches right now who are interims that we don't know whether they're going to get the job. Bannister in St. Louis, Travis Green, New Jersey, Hiller in Los Angeles, and I'm forgetting one other one. But, there were 4 interims, and, I mean, that's about par for the course, 5-6 coaches every year.
Yeah, it really is. And, David Quinn is a very good coach. So I hate to see this happen to him. But, this is just the way it goes. And I think everybody who takes an NHL job realizes. I wouldn't rule out that he'll just settle in as, an assistant coach or an associate coach with some other team. He's been doing that, been a pro coach for a while. And I think once you get, pro level talent, you enjoy working with them. So, we'll see. I don't know. Russ, how old do you think he is?
Oh, I think he looks younger than he is. I want to say he's in his 50s.
Okay.
I'll look it up while you guys are talking.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would play a role in it. Like, depending how old he is, if he's older than we think he is, I think
he's 57 years old.
Yes, I told you, he looks good. He really does.
Yeah, no, he does for sure. But he could just stay in pro hockey as well. But again, it would depend on the opportunities. I think at the college level, like who leaves, and,
right?
All that kind of stuff. So, but it was almost like a mercy firing in San Jose. They were expecting to sort of bottom out and get a good draft pick, but I don't think they expected to bottom out that much.
Right.
So. And I think
it's hard to have those kinds of expectations when your team's really not good. Because again, look, I don't want to discount what a coach can do in this league, but if you don't have talent, it's really hard to get every little bit out of these guys. That's why what Tortorella did was a really great job. But most of the time, it doesn't work that way.
No, you're absolutely right, because you can't teach someone to be a 50-goal scorer.
Right.
You can make them better defensively to make them more competitive. I mean,
right.
if I always think back of the job that Barry Trotz did when he became head coach of the expansion Nashville Predators. But so what did they say about that team for the first 7 or 8 years in the league? Well, they're not very talented, but boy, they're really competitive. Barry's got them competitive. And,
play hard to play against.
Yeah, hard to play against, and that's just code for they're terrible, but they stay in the games. So. And that's how he earned his reputation, was just being a guy that made his team just better enough so that they could compete run with the big dogs, to get off the porch and run with the big dogs. So, it'll be interesting to see where San Jose goes now in terms of
true,
because they're when they traded Hurdle. I just thought, man, this team is going to be bad for a long time. So
I mean, their fortunes might change if they win the lottery and they get Celebrini, and they'll have Celebrini and Smith and Eklund, and they'll have a young core group. But it's 3 or 4 years before they're probably going to, be able to say that they can challenge for a playoff spot, especially in that division with Vegas and Edmonton. So it's
you know what they should do? They should wait and see if Pavelski retires. If he retires, make him the coach.
Well, I've seen
a fiery guy, man. He probably do a good job.
Well, I mean, hey, a goaltender retired and he became general manager in this league, so nothing would be strange. The Sabres had a large press conference yesterday, merely 6 days after dismissing Don Granato. They go back to the future, Kev, and hire Lindy Ruff. What did you think of that decision?
Well, when I stopped laughing, just because I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, this is a retooling, rebuilding team, and they turn back the clock and bring someone else. Maybe he's the right guy for this team. For a team looking to turn a corner. I don't know. I mean, I liked him. I covered him for a long time, and I thought he was a pretty good coach. The only thing is, I thought he was a little stubborn about some things, and you got to be a little open-minded in terms of not everybody can play the same way you want to play. So when you have a team that can be good, if you loosen the reins a little bit, I think you got to let them do that. I mean, I think. There's no better example on that than Scotty Bowman, who wasn't nearly the same coach he was in the 2000s as he was in the 1970s. He adapted. He saw the way the game was going, and when the game changed, he changed. And, so that'll be the question, is whether Lindy Ruff can sort of follow that Scotty Bowman strategy of kind of evolving with the times, because, you can't be the coach that you were in the 1990s today, or in the even in the early 2000s. It's just a game. So.
Well, Russ, he did say in his press availability that, back in, maybe 15 years ago, he would be yelling more at guys like Thomas Vanek and, was more boisterous and in his second and third incarnations with Dallas and with New Jersey, that, especially New Jersey with all the young players that they had, that he learned to be, and I'm not saying that he said this, but more touchy-feely, more sensitive to how young players.
I'm sure Gitnick was watching the press conference and wondering.
Right, but more responsive to more the younger players and how they adjust to a veteran coach, and how they probably somebody like Babcock, who is very authoritarian, that is not going to work anymore. And I guess Ruff is saying that he's adjusted to that, and we'll see. But they're bringing him in to make them accountable. So I don't know how much.
So let's say he does a similar job to John Tortorella. John Tortorella didn't make the playoffs the first year. So then they're going to go 14 years without the playoffs. And then they're going to hope that in that second year, that culture, because everybody likes using that word now, that it clicks. A couple of things went through my mind yesterday. When I saw Zadorov score and I saw that Lindy had a new job again in Buffalo, I was thinking, yeah, this guy's a point a game now in the playoffs. But Lindy didn't like Zadorov when he was younger.
That's not even the best one, Russ. The best one is the guy who's one of the star forwards with the Colorado Avalanche, who left for the KHL because he didn't like Lindy, and that's Valerie Nikushkin.
Right. And so, but that was just what went through my mind. But the other thing is, so if Lindy is going to do this with the young players, there is no Jack Hughes on the Sabres. And Jack Hughes really did cover up a lot of ills and kept Lindy's job for him, I felt. And then, Lindy this year, hey, let's put Alexander Holtz on the fourth line. One of the, young players with the best shots on the team. It's just, I didn't see any real evidence of what he might be talking about. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it's going to be yes, this is what I got to do. And then you'll find out in a quarter of the season that he's still going to rely on as many veterans as possible. And I just feel like these guys all go back to that.
And that's the thing, Kev. And I'm just writing about this now for the Hockey News, that Adam said in the presser, well, Don Granato had some input on the roster because he brought in a lot of the U.S. national development guys that he knew, like Alex Puck and Greenaway and Connor Clifton, that Adams, admitted that Lindy's going to have some input in the roster. That is going to mean a significant changeover in this roster, because he's probably not going to want a lot of young guys playing on the third and fourth line. He's going to want physical guys, veteran guys playing on the third and fourth line. And that's something that's been missing, but that means a significant changeover in the roster.
Yeah, maybe. The one difference is Russ made the comparison to Tortorella, but this team is a lot better than the team that that Tortorella inherited. And this is a team that, in my estimation, underachieved this season. I think people thought that they were good enough to make the playoffs, and they didn't. And so I think they're looking for, one of Ruff's strengths, which is to try to get the most out of, veteran talent, because they have some veterans there, guys that, maybe are closer to being young than being old, but they've still been around a while. And so, if they change a few guys around the edges, which you always need to do anyway, as you take the final step, it may not be quite the major change as we think, because, he has seen the talented teams now, because he's been New Jersey, and they had some talent as well. So if he's going to sit and look at the way this team is playing, he's might tell himself, I got a lot of talent here now. I just got to find 3 or 4 other guys to kind of supplement, and then get these guys to play a little bit harder. But you look at Buffalo's defense; it can be outstanding next season. So, and he certainly didn't have that defense in New Jersey.
No, he lost a couple of free agency. He lost Dougie Hamilton to injury. He had 3 young defensemen. He pointed this out during the press conference, and you have to say that they were decimated by injuries, and the fact that they didn't have a goaltender, and that's on Fitzgerald, that they didn't have a goaltender until the deadline. Which, if they had acquired Jake Allen 2 months before, they're probably in the playoffs. So, it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure there can be some changes. Now, who knows how dramatic, but we'll talk about that as the summer goes along. But let's, as somebody in the chat was like, well, let's talk about the playoffs. I'll just start generally because, most of the series are through 2 games, except for the late starting series, which were Edmonton, LA, and Dallas, Vegas. Of the 6 that are 2 games in, which one do you find the most intriguing, Kev?
It's probably a series that's 2-0. Because Tampa and Florida. I just think this is the series when we're going to have to all admit that Florida is the new Tampa.
Right.
They're the team now that, they've got so much ability, so much talent. And they showed last year they can get all the way to the final as well. And, in the past, Tampa would have won that game last night.
Yeah.
Right.
Without question. And because, they had the goalie, and you could just see he was ready to go. He was loving it, thinking he was just going to be the hero. But it didn't happen. Florida's got a bunch of guys who know how to be heroes as well. So that's a series that I've enjoyed. I like both of those teams. I think both of them are entertaining to watch. So I really like that series, and I certainly have not been surprised by what's gone on between the Islanders and Carolina. Carolina is a better team without question. So. Those are the 2 probably I've spent the most time looking at.
Russ?
Yeah, the Florida series is one that I've spent a ton of time on, and then the Winnipeg, Colorado. The hot takeaway that took place by saying that Georgiev was going to be replaced and he's not going to be able to win in these playoffs and all of that just really rubbed me the wrong way, because I was watching Connor Hellebuck give up goal after goal after goal after goal and not experiencing any bad press.
I couldn't tell that it pissed you off, Russ.
No, and then finally yesterday, saw Hellebuck making some bad plays. He gave up a goal on a bad clear. I would say there were 2 that he would want back, and Georgiev played a terrific game. And if you listen to the press and you listen to fans, you would think that was impossible to happen in that game. And I actually went on Sirius and I said, I thought that was a must-win game for the Jets because of the home ice advantage that Colorado usually has over, was it Ball Arena, whatever they call it now? I don't know. And so I was like, I feel like they have to go up 2-0. If they don't, they could be in a little bit of trouble. And so now I think Winnipeg's in a little bit of trouble. They do.
Well, Kev, I compared this series to that one between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh a few years back with Brzgalov and Marc-Andre Fleury, where neither goalie could stop a beach ball. I mean, and you had two really good goaltenders. Brzgalov had a good history in Anaheim and Phoenix, and then he came to Philadelphia on the big free agent deal, and we know how good Fleury was, and they just couldn't stop anything. And now in this series, it was 7-6 in game one, and now 5-2 in game two.
Yeah, first of all, I'd say, Russ, you're reading the wrong person covering Colorado because, I read Colorado Hockey Now, which is part of my chain, and Evan Rowell was on top of the whole goaltending situation, talking to his teammates, and none of his teammates were concerned about him. And
good for him.
Yeah, much to my surprise, because, he hasn't been very good down the stretch.
No, he had trouble, no doubt.
Yeah, so, but they did not back the bus over him when this went on, and
somebody on this panel did, and then other people that I've read online did. But
But anyway, he had a great. I thought he had a very good bounce back game. That's his. The Winnipeg is a good offensive team. Like they can put pucks in the net.
Sure.
So so I thought he stepped up. In Colorado, we all know what they can do, but it does feel like the first team to 5 is going to win these games. They're certainly not a defensive battle, that's for sure. So
yeah, and the likely Vezina Trophy winner's got a 5.5 goals against in the playoffs. So I would think that Hellebuyck is going to have a good game in one of the two games in Colorado. You would think because he's such a quality goaltender. But yeah, it's just so far. The star goalies, the guys the only one who I think has lived up to expectations so far have been probably Bobrovsky and Shesterkin.
Yeah, they're the two best. I think Bob is the best right now in the playoffs.
Yeah, Ottinger struggled with Dallas, and we'll talk about it. Hellebuyck has struggled. Georgiev, who led the league in wins, has struggled. So it's pretty interesting so far.
Yeah, I want to give Jared Bednar credit though, because I think. Besides you, Mike, a little bit, and other people, I think they read into the post game of what he was saying about Georgiev after game one, like, hey, maybe Georgiev's in a little bit of trouble here. But I took it a different way. I took it like he's trying to light a fire under him and trying to get him to that next gear because he really wants him to be in there, doesn't want to go with what the alternative is. And I think, he succeeded in that.
That's the point, Russ. There was no alternative because Noonan was sick. And Elliot Friedman was saying –
they called up Prostalev.
Okay. You're going to go.
Oh, that's an alternative.
It's not a good one, Russ. And what I'm saying is Elliot Friedman was basically saying the reports out of Colorado were if Noonan wasn't sick, he would have started game 2.
Baloney. I don't buy it for a second.
I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's what it was.
I know. I don't buy it for a second. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, because it's Elliot, I do, but I can see why.
No, I think he got it from somebody, but I think that was just wishful thinking on someone wanting a change when there wasn't going to be a change.
Speaking of goaltending, Bob Duff, my colleague at Detroit Hockey Now, came up with this note, and it's a doozy. Logan Thompson is the first goalie to replace a goalie that won the Cup who was still on the team the following year since the late 1960s.
Wow.
When Gump Worsley, I think it was Gump Worsley, was replaced, and I don't know.
Rogie Vachon probably in 67 or 68.
Yeah, well, whatever it was, they replaced Gump, and then he ended up coming back later in the series, or later in the playoffs.
Right.
But anyway, it's been a long time since that sort of situation has happened.
Well, I know in 67, Bauer, who had won the Cup in 64, was replaced by Sawchuk, and Sawchuk won the Cup. So it was definitely 67, but in 68, I think it was Vachon and Worsley for Montreal, and they won over St. Louis.
And I always like to use the Andy Aikenhead, who took over for Ross Roach, who was in the Stanley Cup for 2 years running, 2 years straight before him. Aikenhead comes in as a rookie and he wins the Stanley Cup. But that was back in 1933.
Yeah.
I did. I want to talk a little bit.
I'm not disputing that. No, go ahead, Kevin. I'm sorry.
I just want to talk a little bit about the Vegas series. I'm writing also for Vegas hockey now, doing a little work on that series. And,
in your spare time, Kev.
yeah, in my spare time. But I've actually enjoyed it. That's a really fascinating team, Vegas. Like, I can make a case, and I could be wrong, but if you look at the roster they now have, the biggest addition is Hurdle, because he's given them the net front presence on the power play that they were lacking. And now all of a sudden, like, their power play since he went to the lineup is at 50-some%. It's just remarkable. And of course, Stone is back as well. Like, they were down in the I think 21st overall at about 19%, and then since Hurdle was inserted in the lineup, they're over 50. So that's really helped. Then Hannafin obviously has made a big difference as well. So
they partnered him with Pietrangelo. They played over 23 minutes in the first game.
Yeah, and Hannafin is actually playing more than or in that first game anyway. Played more than Pietrangelo did. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. That second game is going to be interesting because I love this Dallas team. Like, this team is good. So I don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah, I just feel like Vegas knew what they were doing, matching up against Dallas. Like, they knew who they were going to get back.
Yeah,
I think they play similar styles, and they're comfortable with the way they do it. And I just feel like they knew what they were doing.
Well, I heard the conspiracy theories, Kevin, and I don't buy it, but I heard the conspiracy theories in that last game of the regular season that Vegas lost, and nobody loses on purpose, but they played a full lineup that they lost on purpose against Anaheim so they could play. Nobody in their right mind would want to play Dallas ahead of Edmonton.
I think they looked at it, Mike, and I think they didn't care that they were playing Dallas, and I do think they play similar. So I do think there's a chance that they did want that. I do.
Well, I'm gonna sound just like Russ sounded about the Elliot Friedman rumor. I'm just not buying that. Like, players, that's just not in their DNA.
Right.
Like, I can see a guy, a GM sitting up there in the ivory tower thinking, boy, we'd be better off if we played Dallas. I mean, they beat Dallas 3 times in the regular season. They were 3-0. Now, that's misleading too, because the last time they played them was in December. Like, Dallas isn't anything like they were in December. They're a much better, team, and they were 17-4 down the stretch. Like, that's why it's hard to believe. Right. You really want to play a team that's 17-4 in their last 21 games? Like, no, that's a team playing pretty darn well.
Well, Vegas is a miracle of modern medicine. That's all.
And here's the other thing too. 5-on-5, to me, that's what hockey's all about. And Dallas won the 5-on-5. They won 3-2. They just happened to give up 2 power play goals because, as I just mentioned, the Vegas power play is much improved.
We'll see what Dallas is made of next game, because if they go down 0-2 to Vegas, they're in deep trouble. Like, Vegas, you don't want to be down to Vegas like that.
No, you don't. I mean, even just probability says you're in trouble.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, they're the scariest 8 seeds since. Well, I mean, Florida made it as
last year. Yeah,
that's right. But before that, it would have been the Kings in 2012 that won the cup. So
that's just it. I mean, Bruce Cassidy was talking, and I talk about this all the time, and I give Russ a hard time because he likes talking declarative sentences. And I always say I have no idea what's going on. And Bruce Cassidy was talking at his press conference about, isn't this why we like sports? Is we don't know? And I said, well, that's not why Russ likes it. He knows. So he knows. And he still loves sports. He knows. When you should hear him talk, he knows. So. But anyway, I laughed to myself when I heard him talk about it. But he's right. Like, and there's no other on our sport, at least in my opinion, it's more uncertain than any other sport. No, not baseball. I guess baseball's the same too, because but like football, there's some probability and predictions that's a little bit easier to them, and certainly in the NBA. We don't have as many upsets, but baseball and hockey, holy cow!
Yeah.
You just don't know, kind of what's going to happen. And it
is won every round generally.
Yeah. And I have to say right now, and I hope my friends in British Columbia are not jumping off bridges right now, but I think the Vancouver Canucks are in real trouble without Demko, with Casey DeSmith in goal, and Nashville has been since the All-Star break have been one of the 2 or 3 hottest teams in the league. They had that long winning streak, and they got into the playoffs. And I think everybody picked Vancouver, but now with Demko out, and they did not play well last night in a 4-1 loss. Going back to Nashville, I'm not saying it's going to be a sweep or something like that, but I think Nashville's got the advantage right now, Kev.
Yeah, but it's not like they're not the team that Vancouver is. I mean, I agree with everything you said. Without Demko, because he's such a fine goalie. But there's a lot of talent on that Vancouver team, so it'll be interesting. And they don't, they don't have the natural scorers, they being the Predators, that Vancouver does. So they got to work a little bit harder to get their goals.
Well, there were a couple things. I work with JD Burke, excuse me, at EP Rinkside. He's out of Vancouver, and he thought Pettersson looked like he may have a wrist injury by the way he's shooting the puck or not shooting it. And so that's interesting to me, because Demko does cover a lot of hills, but I did see Vancouver's defense standing around a little bit. Like, you can't let Philip Forsberg kind of get anywhere within 5 feet of the net and not be touched, because you're a dead man then. And so I'm sure there's something they can do to tighten it up. But, Casey DeSmith, I don't think any of us think like he could win 3 or 4 games in a row or anything close to that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that statement.
Now, even though last night's game was pretty close and ended up being 4-3, I still think the most sort of one-sided series has been the Rangers and the Capitals. I think right now the Capitals are being outclassed. I think the Rangers are the much better of the 2 teams. I'm not saying it's going to be a sweep, but if they split going back to Washington, then I think the Rangers can finish it off in 5. Kev, the controversy last night, I didn't even see it until after the game, was the hit that Artemi Panarin, who does not have the reputation of being, like Tom Wilson, hitting TJ Oshie, and Oshie was out for a significant period of time, probably in concussion protocol. And now there are people talking about him potentially, being reviewed by the Department of Player Safety. I haven't heard anything as of yet. And I saw it I watched it like 4 or 5 times. I don't think it's something that should be suspendable, but I wanted to get your input on that.
Well, I think it's one of those borderline calls that's hard to predict because of the history of the Department of Player Safety. It's just hard to get a read on it. So. But when I first saw it, I thought no. I looked at it again, and I thought maybe. It's right in that kind of gray area. Is it a 1-game suspension, or is it no? Is it a fine? It's kind of a tough call. And the fact that he's not that kind of player, he doesn't play like that. He doesn't even he's more polite than heavy hitter. So. To factor into it, but that series, it doesn't feel like Washington can play with them, and they've struggled. Washington had trouble scoring goals down the stretch, and still managed to get in. You can't not score goals and beat the Rangers. So how about that? At the end of that game, I didn't see the end of the game, but I saw afterward that Trouba and Lindgren played the last 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
They were stuck out there. The Rangers tried to clear the zone 4 or 5 times and could not get the puck out of the zone. And Ovechkin almost tied it with about 5 seconds left to go. So they were stuck out there, and they were absolutely dead. They could not move at the end of the game.
Yeah, so. I give Carberry credit because Ovechkin has played horribly, and he called him out because he can't bench him. So you might as well call him out because, imagine him going through a game without an actual shot on net, a playoff game no less. So I think he did the right thing to kind of try and do that. One thing I did chuckle at is the Empire State Building tweeted that it was the Rempe State Building because they had it in Rangers colors. That's pretty funny. Everybody's getting too carried away with it, obviously, but they decided to.
Hey, he scored a goal, Russ.
No.
He scored a goal.
I know.
He's got more goals in the series than Ovechkin does, doesn't he? Yeah, there you go.
But the Capitals are in trouble. I mean, look, I watched Oshie really intently again in that game against Philly, and he looked banged up to begin with. Now he's probably even more banged up. Right. So that's tough. Ovechkin's just, he's still out of shape. He's huffing and puffing out there, and he hasn't been much of a factor. So I just think, they'll probably win one because I do think they have enough veterans that they can do that. And it's not Charlie Lindgren's fault. It's really not being able to score. And look, McMichael had a nice goal, but you need more than Connor McMichael.
Yeah. Okay. The other series that goes tonight, switching venues from Boston to Toronto, is the Bruins and the Leafs. And Kev, you're an experienced hand at the whole playoff injury sort of shadows and fog. What's going on right now with William Nylander is driving people in Toronto crazy because they're not getting explanations. And, Sheldon Keefe's not going to come out and tell you, well, he's got this, he's got that. He's going to, but everybody's saying, well, why hasn't he been in the first two games? And if he's not in tonight, well, why isn't he? Well, they're not going to tell you.
No.
They're not going to do it.
No. And the teams through the years have gotten so much better at, keeping it away. Like, in the 1980s when I started covering the NHL, they didn't volunteer. You could get the information on injuries during the regular season, but it was harder in the playoffs. But generally you could get it from the other team. Like I remember one year where it was the Calgary Flames that informed us that Mark Messier was wearing a flak jacket. To take care of his injured ribs. So, we all reported it because he's wearing a flak jacket. When you hit him, you can tell,
tell me, I'm pretty sure even when I started, sometimes the other team would have somebody watching the other team's practice. That doesn't happen anymore.
Oh, they still have guys that walk. Yeah, they still have guys that walk out and watch it. Yeah.
I know some team guys get kicked out once in a while.
I haven't seen that in a long time, but you usually see like the coaches oftentimes will be up in the rafters watching the game, or they come out and they get their coffee and they're sitting there, in the kind of hallway watching, that way and stuff. So they're still watching. They're still doing that. Okay. Making adjustments on their whiteboards at the lines and all that stuff. So
I do like that, by the way. I don't know if you do it, Kev. Anytime I go into the opposing team's locker room, I always like to see what's on the whiteboard. Because sometimes you see a little note that players aren't telling you, or somebody's circled, or somebody. I like that.
I do too. Yeah, and they do. I mean, that's like 1950s high schoolish. How a 1950s coach would, talk about, okay, we're playing these guys. You circle the guy. Now we got to get close enough to know what kind of gum he'd choose, that sort of thing. So,
Spearmint. The other thing with Toronto right now, and it was written about in the Toronto Sun this morning, was the sort of no-show through two games of Mitch Marner. I mean, Austin Matthews had a big game got the Leafs off the mat with a goal and 2 assists. He was the star player that we know he is, but he's had some struggles over the years in the playoffs. But Mitch Marner has not played well, has not made much of an impact, has not scored a point in 2 games. And if you couple that with Nylander, Kev, it's sort of surprising that it is 1-1, because without with one of your 2 top forwards not really registering anything on the Richter scale, and the other one not even being in the lineup, that's your firepower is severely limited.
Yeah. Well, I think too, the goaltender situation in Boston is conducive. It's causing so much angst with the fan base. Mm-hmm. That can't be helpful either. I don't know. I wish we'd sort of get over the idea that you can't rotate goalies in in the playoffs. I think it's kind of time for that.
I don't know. I still disagree.
So
well, let's just say this. I mean, Montgomery, his psyche is scarred with what happened last year.
yeah.
I mean, it's the mistake that he made, and we still don't know for sure when Allmark was hurt, but clearly he was hurt in that series at some point, and they kept him in when they're up 3-1. They decided to stay with the injured goalie because they didn't want to switch goalies, and then he couldn't play in Game 7, and they went to Swayman, who was cold, and that you can say maybe it cost them the series because they lost in overtime, but they had other injuries too. I'm a traditionalist, but if you've been rotating them all year, Kev, I don't see a problem with rotating them, but it goes against hockey.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Like I think you generally are better off if you have one goalie. There's no doubt about it. But there are times when you need to change goalies, and it's almost like coaches are fearful of doing it because they're going to be hung out to dry,
Right.
For that act. And sometimes it's the best way. I mean, the Bruins had a very successful rotation this year. But, the minute he went to Allmark in Game 2, the second guessing started even before the game.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going away?
Swayman's got a good record against the Leafs, too. If he didn't, I don't think there'd be as much.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it.
But anyway, I think as much as they say they don't pay any attention to fans, they do. They do. They don't like being raked over the coals over – a decision like that. So I don't know. It certainly is, interesting. But I thought that series was going to be close. Anyway,
I thought 6. I still think it.
But Russ, I mean, the thing is that Swayman's record against the Leafs shouldn't be determinative because they'd won 7 games in a row and Allmark played 3 of them. So it's not like Allmark was 0-3.
No. This has nothing to do with Allmark. I just think Swayman makes the Leafs uncomfortable for whatever reason. And I think that's all it's about, just a matchup of styles. But what I'm wondering about, though, and I don't see this, so I understand the criticism of Marner. Look, I know he's a shoot-first guy, but without Nylander in the lineup, you would think he can get more than 2 shots on net per game.
He's a pass first.
Pass first, sorry. Yeah. Pass first guy. But again, Sheldon Keefe should be lighting a fire under him that, hey, without Nylander in there, you got to do better than 2 shots on net per game. You just do. And I don't see that intensity in Marner that I saw in Matthew. And that's the problem here is, they're getting paid close to the same, and one guy can't do it alone, So I saw it in Riley. I saw Riley playing just tremendous hockey, but I don't know what it is about Marner. I don't want to say he stinks in the playoffs because I think that's too simple. Yeah. I think there's just something there that he needs to be able to get to a next level that we don't see him doing.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, and it's already started. It started middle of the season. Marner has a year left in his contract, and that nobody's thinking about that right now. They're thinking about the playoffs. But in the summer, if they lose in the first round, everybody's thinking about what's going to happen on his new deal. And, can we trade him? Well, he's got a no move clause. If he doesn't want to get traded, he's not getting traded. So, I mean, but the heat that he will feel if they lose in the first round and he's a no-show, he was the leading scorer for them in the playoffs in the first round against Tampa Bay. So
I just felt like even in that game, we saw Tavares step up first, right? And I think
Bertuzzi and Domi have stepped up in their secondary players.
I think was really important because he's a leader on that team. That turnaround goal was nice. It was something that you would see from him like 2 years ago. And I think that sparked the team. And I think if Marner got a goal, it would spark the team. But really, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Great show, guys. We'll be back on Friday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.